I'm very honored to be able to invite up to the podium our last speaking guest for the day, our great Senator, John Hickenlooper of Colorado. Senator Hickenlooper serves on the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committees and its Space and Science Subcommittee. Senator Hickenlooper has been a staunch supporter of the space sector, and as my notes say, since he came to Washington, D.C., but I think one of the things I wanted to highlight is Senator Hickenlooper, about a decade ago, had a lot of vision in his role as governor of the state of Colorado, created a role in our state government called the Champion of Aerospace. And they never gave the champion a big belt, which I felt like the champion had earned as being the champion, but really showed, a decade ago, the foresight to support aerospace in Colorado. And I think even a couple decades before that, sir, started the first brew pub in Denver, which is a theme we'll continue after the remarks as we go to our reception over at Voyager Space. But the importance of brew pubs in the development of the aerospace industry, I think, is well documented and understood. So thank you. But here in Congress, he's demonstrated his dedication to public-private partnerships in space and support for the Colorado space community, as well as providing valuable legislation targeting and supporting innovative and important space policy issues. So we thank Senator Hickenlooper for joining us today, for supporting space, for supporting young professionals, and thank you, sir. Come please give us your remarks.
Well, this is any person's, it's not a nightmare, but you never want to be at the end of the day. So I will try to be as concise as possible. And I want to start just by saying that the exploration of space and the entire, and I mean in the largest sense, the entire endeavor has so many accessory consequences. In other words, there's nothing else. I did 8 years as a mayor of Denver, 8 years as a governor. Nothing else excites young people, and especially kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, to get into science and all manner of STEM, as space does. And it has that particular capability to capture the imagination of young people that we don't find really anywhere else. So I throw that out there just I'm going to describe a little bit about why we're in a true glory moment. Glorious moment? Glory moment. That makes it sound like a real moment in space. We're seeing the effects of the innovation that space creates, the workforce, the modernizing systems. We also have to recognize we're in a period where we have real breakthrough engineers and innovators and really creators. I mean, I can't remember I don't think there's been anyone in my lifetime like Elon Musk who was willing to come in and not disregard what had been done before, but reevaluate it with a completely different set of eyes and say, all right, this part will keep, but these parts can be done much more effectively. And if you look at the cost differential of what he's proposed in many cases, it's staggering. And yet now it's being copied day in and day out by the rest of the industry. And, he frustrates the living daylights out of me. I actually, when I was a governor, I officiated the wedding of his brother who lives in Boulder, and he came and was the best man. And at that point, it was really all about Tesla. But he was still a little bit frustrating, not as frustrating as he can be now. And yet, we as a country owe him an amazing debt. I think there should be no question that we recognize what he's done. We're looking now at the forward-looking policies that have been in place now for a number of years, where we have enhanced funding. We're looking at strategic partnerships in a new way, public-private partnerships, streamlining processes, getting rid of red tape, looking at how to create novel missions, but at the same time maintaining safe and sustainable space environments. We're working on a couple of bills right now. One we introduced last year, now we just reintroduced it, the Bipartisan Orbits Act, which of course trying to get all that junk out of LEO. These are dangerous pieces of debris going at incredibly high speeds and can be catastrophic in the wrong circumstance. And I think we've got some good ideas of how to address that, both from the perspective of government, but public-private partnerships. Then we have the Launch Communication Act, which we introduced in May. It's bipartisan, really looking at modernizing FCC licensing. The current spectrum licensing hasn't changed for forever, it seems like. Shouldn't say that. It was created decades ago, and yet our abilities to subdivide it and utilize the spectrums in different ways, I guess you'd say the spectra in different ways, we're not getting the maximum benefit we could. And what the Launch Communications Act does is it solves a lot of the logjam by decreasing the administrative burden on both launch providers and the FCC, so it'll accommodate more growth. And then the third bill, the Spaceport Act. Again, the Spaceport, the Space Transportation Infrastructure Matching, STIM, yes, whatever. I'm dyslexic, so I have a really hard time with acronyms. Anyway, STIM hasn't been modernized. Well, it was written it hasn't been modernized since 1994. We haven't really used it to any great effect since 2012, and yet it allows us to begin looking at and building the infrastructure so that as we get more transportation in and out of space, that we can do so safely and rapidly. We had 79 launches in 2022. We're at a rate now where we're looking at doubling that this year. And so this is one of those things that's going to come up on us much more rapidly than what people have thought and really what we've seen written about. And again, I think it's going to catalyze a whole new generation of excitement and innovation. As always, we're trying to clarify the federal roles and responsibilities for the mission authorization of some of these new space activities, commercial space activities. We want to make sure that we can formally grant the Office of Space Commerce the powers sufficient so they are the ones who authorize responsibilities, ensure compliance with international treaty obligations, making sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, but at the same time we're maintaining the competition that always drives the innovation that follows when we make these large investments. If you look at each of these things, I mean, we've made such rapid progress in really such an incredibly short period of time that you sometimes go, holy smokes, you pat yourself on the back and say, my God, haven't we done great? You look at the last 8 or 10 years, and we're just in a whole different frame of mind of how we think about commercializing space and how many more companies and how many more people are working on space. And it reminds me of when I was a kid, my grandfather had a very small orchard. He had like 6 trees, but he'd harvest the apples, and half of them were crab apples, so they were only good to make mediocre pies, at least from the perspective of a kid. But we go out there and we spend all day Saturday, all day Sunday helping him pick apples and putting them into baskets. And in the end, he'd always say, my God, look how much work we've done. And then he'd look at all the trees, all the apples still on the trees, and say, look how much there is yet left to do. And I think that's where we are right now. And you all, based on the last Tom Cruise movie, should you accept the mission, is to take that great potential out there and make sure we get as many apples in the baskets as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. As the senator said, now we can get on to drinking. So let me just do a few thank yous before we wrap up here. First